My name is Giselle. This is Slow Food Live. I am really excited about today's session for so many reasons. If you're not familiar with Slow Food or Slow Food Live, Slow Food is an international organization that advocates for good, clean, and fair food for all. We are present in 140 plus countries around the world, and all of the countries and chapters and local entities sort of take on what is important to the community at hand. And there are several themes within the slow food world, one of which is slow meat. I'm really excited to be digging into conversations about slow meat, especially with Adrian Lipscombe, who was a 2020 Snailblazer with Slow Food USA. So I'm really happy you're here with us, Adrian. And also, I love bacon, so an extra reason to be excited about this session. I'm going to let Adrian tell you more about herself, but before I do, I want to shout out to Nyman Ranch, our wonderful and longtime partner, who is our partner in creating this 4-part series. Today is the first of the 4-part series. We'll have a session every Wednesday for the next few weeks. And Nyman Ranch is a great partner and an excellent example of some very innovative slow meat practices. And I'm really excited to have them join us for this series we've been trying to make happen for a while, and here we are, and we have an excellent lineup of speakers thanks to Niman, and I'm really excited to be starting with Adrian, as I mentioned. So before we get into the bacon, I'm going to play a short video from Nyman Ranch.
It's 98 and hog market it was terrible. And so in 99, I was watching a show called Market to Market. Paul Willis was on the show, said he was looking for farmers to do this outside pork thing. And I said, well, that's exactly what I do. I said, Penny, you got to find Paul Willis. And so she did.
I happened to read an article, I think it was in the Agri News, and it was on Paul Willis and the way he was raising pigs in Iowa. So my brother and I got in the car one day and we called him up first, and we drove down to see what his operation looked like.
There was no Google back then. You had to call information on the phone. That's the way we did it. So we found him, and you gave him a call. And we met him in Sioux City, and we'll never forget, Paul, as humble as he is, if everybody knows that, says, you know, this is what I'm doing. I don't know if it's going to work. I have no promises, but if you're willing to go in and try it, he says, we'll welcome you.
Nyman Ranch was growing a lot at that time, and they started a feeder pig farm, and so I started buying feeder pigs, and I wanted to be a part of Nyman Ranch because I believed in it. I still believe in it.
When we found him, we thought, wow, there's actually people who think like we do, think that the hog should be raised that way.
And that's why I'm raising pigs.
Sold my first hogs in November 99. Had 40 hogs that weighed 280. I still have the check, or a copy of the check.
I can raise a hog this way, and Nyman Ranch tries really hard to enable you to make money. You've got a superior product that you're selling, and people want to buy that superior product. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel good to be a part of Nyman Ranch because I can enjoy raising pigs, I'm making money, and at the same time, I'm not under threat that I'm going to be squeezed out because I'm too small.
I work with Nyman because I've met a lot of friends and good people to work with.
It's who we are.
Yep. I love what I'm doing. I have no idea where I'd be if I didn't join 20 years ago. I wake up every morning just thanking the Lord that I got Nyman Ranch.
And without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to you, Adrian. Adrian Lipscombe, as I mentioned, is a 2020 Snailblazer and also just a generally very inspiring person. You're a restaurant owner, a grower, and you have a great project called 40 Acres and a Mule that I'm going to let you tell us more about. And then I'm going to tell all of you how you can support this great project. So Adrian, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me and see me well? Good? All right. Hi, my name is Adrian Lipscomb. I am in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and right now we are at my home. I am a restaurant owner. I own Uptown Cafe and Bakery. We focus very much on farm to table. We work locally, and in fact, we started working more hyper locally in our area with farmers due to COVID and the pandemic that's happening. I also work another project called 40 Acres and a Mule, where we look to preserve the legacy of Black farmers across the nation. It is a very important project, as you know, or many people do know, that there's less than 2% of Black farmers out of all the populations of farmers in the U.S., and it's dwindling. I would say over 55% of Black farmers are over the age of 65. So there is a significant need to preserve the legacy and understanding their traditions and their methods of farming, but also start looking to invoke and promote new farmers and new Black farmers in agriculture. There's a space for us, so we definitely need to find a way to preserve that, but also make it stronger. So with that, I would like to thank Nyman Ranch for inviting me to be able to do this. This is a very fun project for me. I like to cure my own bacon. I started doing it a couple of years ago. So this just became very intimate for me to be able to do. At my own restaurant, we purchase about 3 to 4 pigs a year. And part of that was to teach others about the raising of pigs, so the sustainability and the humaneness of how pigs are taken care of, but also the fact that I wanted chefs to understand where their food comes from, and especially understanding their meat. So part of being the pork, we get to break down our own pigs when they come to the restaurant, and we invite other chefs to come to the restaurant to check out how we do that. So no further ado, I really want to break into talking about the pork itself. So I'm going to hand it back to you to talk about a little bit about the partnership that we're doing, and then I'll bring out the pork.
Great, thanks, Adrian. I put in the chat a couple links, both to Uptown Cafe and Bakery, Adrian's restaurant, and then also the 40 Acres Project. As Adrian mentioned, I'm really excited because Nyman Ranch is matching donations to the current GoFundMe account for 40 Acre project for 40 Acres. I'm going to throw the link in there and encourage you all, if you're learning with Adrian today and joining us today, to get in there and make a donation, and Nyman Ranch will match your donation. So let's get 40 Acres to their goal, or at least closer to their goal. I'm really excited about that. The 40 Acres Project is a really big piece of Adrian being named the 2020 Snailblazer. It's a really important project. It's a really important effort, especially at this time. So jump in there after the session or during the session and show your support, and Nyman Ranch will match it. And now we have this beautiful piece of meat in front of us. So I'm gonna send it back to you.
Here. So Nyman Ranch sent me a beautiful piece of meat, which the understanding is mostly when you do pick up your, if you decide to pick up a pork belly, which this is, you can see from the beautiful fat on the backside, which is very clear and clean, which that's one thing I like to talk about, especially when we talk about pork, is the meat itself, and that pork is a lovely fatty piece of meat, which is wonderful, but also just how clean and pure and marbleized the meats are, especially when they are grass-fed or they're humane and living on a farm. Again, my pigs do come from a farm. We're able to go and visit them. We're able to understand what they've been fed. We're able to ask questions about what's happening with our pigs. And then the quality of meat is just, you can just tell just by the color and the pureness of this color and the cleanness of the fat, that this is a wonderful piece of meat that I have right here. Another thing that I do love to bring up is that not all pork is the same. So since, especially with commercialized and industrial meat, they really try to focus on trying to make, quote unquote, the perfect meat that's kind of repetitive over and over again. And when you work grass-fed or farm to table, or you work with farmers, not all pork is the same. They don't all eat the same amount of food. They don't all walk. They don't all sleep. They don't all, eat as the same amount every time. So your pork is going to be different, especially when you hit towards the seasons. And so the seasons, you can definitely tell between your pork what's changing in your pork because of how much fat that they get. So, towards the wintertime, they're not moving as much. They're going to have a little bit more fat. So, necessarily to say that not all pork is equal. So that makes it a lot of fun. So when you pick up a pork belly, this is a whole pork belly. Sometimes you'll get a half a pork belly. Today I am going to focus on, going to cut this pork belly in half. So you'll necessarily will get to see that cross section in the pork belly where you do see that bacon. So I'll bring it up a little bit. So you can see that bacon. That's what that bacon slice will look like when you decide to slice it. So we have this beautiful pork belly that we're going to work with, and I'm going to start talking about the curing process. And so in the curing process, or I call it the uncuring process, which can be in two forms. If you decide to cure, you may see some recipes that call for a pink salt, which is that's nitrates that's in the salt. And it's not that much, usually a teaspoon or a tablespoon or so that you will add to it to cure your piece of meat, which is pretty much just dried and cooling out a lot of that moisture and preserving that piece of meat. And today we are not going to use pink salt. We're going to use celery powder, which is a great natural substitute that you can use to replace it. And part of the USDA and Nyman Ranch and such, they do use this process of uncured where they use celery powder versus the nitrates or the pink salt that you see it's called in the commercializing. Some of the seasonings that I like to use, which again, I'm telling you, pork is so much fun, especially when you get to make bacon, because when you go to the grocery store and you see that there's mesquite and there's applewood and then there's smoked honey and such, you get to play around with whatever flavors you decide to dictate that pork belly to be. And today I decided to go all out and really look at different spices, but also look at what else I have in my cabinet. So today I am working with a plethora of different types of spices, and we're going to be using different things. So I'm going to point out some stuff. I grind a lot of my own spices. So I definitely want some cracked black peppercorn. So I will be cracking some black peppercorn. I have some cloves. I have fresh garlic where I'm going to crush some garlic, red pepper flake. I really enjoy. One that's really unique to me, especially moving up here, was wild ramps. And so we were able to forage wild ramps this year, and I was able to get some from farmers, I probably had over 20 something pounds. And so we decided to dry it and then implement it in different foods. And so today I'll be using dried ramps and making ramp powder for that. And then the salt amount, which is pretty cool about curing, is that it's really not that much salt. We'll be using about 4.5 teaspoons of salt along with celery powder. And if you're asking me celery powder, is that the name or is it really what it is? And it is, it's really celery. I happen to have my own celery that I grew here in the beet before the frost. I dried it and I made my own celery powder. I also have a little bit of allspice. And these are all kind of just different spices I like to use when I make a pork dish. But I thought maybe we can use this a little bit on the curing side. And then I also wanted to show you what pink salt looks like. It is pink. So you can replace this with celery powder, 1-to-1, if you are deciding to use that. And then also brown sugar. So I have all those spices that I've already ground up here. And then I'm going to add my brown sugar to that, which I'm going to put in a bigger thing. And my ramp powder. And my celery powder I made today. And one other thing that I do like to use is a little bit of honey. And on this honey that I'm going to be using, this honey is a dark honey. People like to use molasses. And I think more enriched flavors is kind of what I like to go for when I'm curing, because I want to taste that, because the smoking of the pork, which we smoke on a pit, and I use more of an inverse, so indirect heat on the pit. I like to use a darker honey. So this right here is a buckwheat honey, and it has a very strong smell, and I like to use about 1/2 cup. This is going to get kind of sticky, so I am going to grab some gloves real quick. So I am only going to do this portion of this pork belly, but I do like to make sure we cover the entire pork belly. So I'm going to mix all these ingredients together. It is going to be quite sticky, and it's going to be thick. And as you can see, it's like really thick in my hands. Some people like more of a watery base or dried powder base if they're using it, and they just don't put in the honey as a substitute. But I do like the honey. It does help break down. It does help cure. It does help put a little sweetness and make more of an umami taste to it. And so what I'm going to do is just pour this a little bit right here. And it's going to be sticky. And it's okay, because what you're going to see happen, and I'm going to bring up a cured piece of meat, is what exactly happens to the pork itself. So I'm going through this process where it's just very sticky for me, and it's very thick. And like I said, it's okay, it's cold. But as this breaks down, we're going to cure this piece of pork for about 7 days. And every day, I'm going to go and flip this piece of meat. And it's going to be real sticky. It's going to be thick. And I'm going to go through this process, and I'm going to rub and kind of massage this piece of meat with all the spices and kind of pull all these pieces out. Gonna flip it over. Right. So once I have this pretty much covered, which is kind of interesting, I refrigerate and keep this at a cool temperature to let this cure. I am in the north, so I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm able to kind of cure this in my garage. But you want to refrigerate this as this curing process is happening. And like I said, every day you're going to want to flip. And I'm going to show you the process of one happening now. So this one was done about 4 or 5 days ago. And what you're going to see is that same process that I did. I did this on on the largest piece. And you can see that honey, and I'll bring it up a little bit, that honey has kind of liquefied and kind of made a syrup. And all those spices are being in there. And what I do is that I go through and I flip it for the day and just do a good check. And again, this goes back into my garage where it's nice and cool, nice and cold. And that's where it's going to stay. And then I will flip it again. And this flipping process helps kind of regulate the salt. So the salt doesn't just go all on one side of the pork belly, but it doesn't just cure on one side. So you want to make sure you evenly do this and make sure that you're doing the flip every day. So unfortunately, we're not going to get to go out to my smoker. We got about 6 inches of snow out here, but we were able to smoke some pork belly, so you can take a look and see what we got going on. So on pork belly, I like to use a little fruity wood. I like to use a little apple, a little cherry, a mix with oak to give it a nice smoky flavor. And you're going to do that for about 2 to 3 hours at 225 degrees. And you want an internal temperature about 150. We're not there to cook it. We're not here to cook the pork. We're here to smoke it and to help infuse the curing process. So as part of that, you can see that this is nicely smoked on the outside. And if I wanted to, I can clean it up by taking off this outer layer, a little bit of that fat. And then we have, what I have is a smoked piece of bacon, which is, I think somebody's asking a question. But this bacon right here, you can see just that evenness of cured pork. And then the smell is amazing. I wish y'all could really just smell how amazing this pork is. It has a very intense smoky flavor, smoky smell. I also like to smoke my own ham hocks in this way. I like to be able to use some of this bacon or this bacon fat for different recipes. Put in my beans and such. I'm a Southerner, so we do put pork in our beans. But this is a perfect way for you to do your own bacon. And then plus, what's so great about doing your own is that you can cut your own thickness. So, you know, you don't have to necessarily cut a thin piece of bacon. You can cut some thick pieces of bacon for yourself. And this is wonderful because I'll go through this process over several different pork bellies, and then I will slice my bacon, and then I will seal it with a sealer, and then I'll put it in the freezer. It's one of the most amazing things that I'm lucky enough to be able to do this process, but also able to share and talk to my farmers about how the pork did. And it gives a great opportunity for that close-knit relationship with my farmers to share, you know, to share bacon. That's a bonus, but to share your experience of cooking their pork. And then if we saw anything wrong, or if we said this is great, or we start asking questions on how they're raised and what happens to them. We have been very lucky that Nyman Ranch also sent me some bacon, which they sent me some Applewood smoked uncured bacon. And this is uncured using the celery powder. And this bacon is quite amazing. I already had some today, but I go through the process of if I'm slicing this bacon or putting any bacon on, when I decide to start making that bacon jam, I like to bake my bacon. And I know that can be sacrilegious to some people, but I like to put it on a grate, which allows for the heat to go on both sides of the bacon as it cooks. Trust and believe, I still use a cast iron skillet when I have to make bacon. But if I'm making a lot of bacon at a time, which sometimes I have to do, especially for work, I will put the bacon on a grated sheet, and then I will bake this bacon on high on a convection oven, probably for up to 20 minutes plus a flip in between, at 400 degrees. And I like crispy bacon. And what I'm going to do for everybody is that I'm going to make some bacon jam. And bacon jam is really near and dear to my heart. It is almost like preserves, bacon preserves, in which you can go into your refrigerator and grab anytime and add almost on anything. I've had it on ice cream to biscuits. And what I'm going to do today is going to make some for biscuits. Another great thing about bacon jam, and that I love about bacon jam, is that it is very forgiving. So if you have too crispy bacon and that you're just not going to eat, which I don't think anybody ever does that, but they usually eat it. This bacon is really does good if your bacon is crispy, or if it's too crispy and you want to use it for something else and don't want to waste it. So using it for bacon jam. I'm going to pop these in the oven. So the magic of Zoom television, I already made some bacon, and this is pretty crisp. I like to use bacon and let it cool down first before I decide to make my bacon jam. And what you're going to need to do to follow through to making the bacon jam is you're going to need to cut and chop up your bacon. So I am going to chop up this bacon, and more of a rough chop. There's no necessarily size you need, a uniform size you need for this. And I cut some earlier, in which I have some of this in here. And you're also going to need some onions. You need some onions. I'm going to turn my cast iron on. You need some brown sugar. And you're going to need some apple cider vinegar. So what I'm going to do is move over to the stove, and then I'm going to bring y'all with me. Try to do this little trick here. Uh-oh. Oh, it looks like I flipped around. look like I lost y'all.
We got you.
Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, I lost y'all. Yeah, I just saw a quick question. Somebody said, can you make it spicy? And I said, heck yeah. And that's, I failed to mention that, but to make it spicy, I love to use a habanero salt, or I like to use a salt with a spice to it or a pepper to it, and allow that to kind of soak in part of the curing process. So most definitely, yes. Yes, you can make it spicy. I'm going to do a little zoom vision, or I'm going to turn my camera around and so y'all can kind of see what I'm doing when it comes to, let me turn on some light right here so you can see my stuff. So you're not going to see too much of my hand action happening here, but I am going to pour in some onions, and I'm just going to let these kind of roll a little bit. Some people like charred onions. Like if you want a smoky flavor, go ahead and let this sit for a little bit. My cast iron was already pretty much seasoned, so this is a really good reason you don't have to add any more oil to it. If you have a nice seasoned pan, I'm just trying to bring some of those oils out in those onions. And I mean, this is a pretty quick and easy, and I'm going to toss in that bacon. And like I said, this is like, we got that nice salty bacon in here with those onions, and we're going to add in that brown sugar. And that's a little bit like a little bit more than a half cup, probably 3/4 cup of brown sugar. And my favorite part, we're going to add in that apple cider vinegar. This is about a cup apple cider vinegar. And we're just going to let it roll. So in this process, we're just going to let it boil out. So we're just going to let some of that apple cider vinegar evaporate and boil out. And I'm going to turn this around. So as that's like cooking, it's almost going to do like a simmer. It's going to make a wonderful thick syrup around that bacon. I'm going to turn it up a little bit in that process. And what we're going to do is just going to let it roll on its own, and it's going to create a wonderful bacon jam that's going to be thick, and that's going to be able to be spreadable. Bacon jam, like I said, is usually you put it in cold. It usually comes out pretty cold, or you can warm it back up. We like to use it at the restaurant for adding on to fried Brussels sprouts. Like they like to add it on to fried Brussels sprouts. We like to warm up the bacon jam and then warm up the syrup and then put right on top of the Brussels sprouts. I also like to add it, like I said, to ice cream, believe it or not. Like I said, it has that sweet, tangy, and salty flavor that just kind of covers it all. So it ends up being something that just kind of works magically when you cook it. And I also like to along with that is I like to serve it as a side, and as part of an appetizer. People like to eat it with crackers. People like to eat it with crackers and cheese. Also, one of my favorites is making it and putting it with biscuits. So I made some biscuits. So hopefully, as this continues to cook, and it'll take a couple minutes to cook down, while it's cooking down, we'll talk a little bit about 40 acres. So 40 acres project came to fruition last year, especially after the passing of George Floyd, when we looked at what was happening within our food system. And especially when I started going through the restaurant stages of everybody else that was panicking about what was happening to our food and our supply, but also our restaurants. A lot of people at the time were not thinking about our farmers. And when I started investigating and started talking to our farmers, the conversation came up about Black farmers and what was happening to Black farmers. And from what I was finding out is a lot of Black farmers were not receiving aid or not understanding how to get aid during COVID. But then the conversation started going further about the sustainability of Black farmers and what was happening to Black farmers at this time. And so the 40-acre project started to come into more of a fruition and more of a project when we started looking at the idea of how can we create an accelerator for minorities to be able to understand how to farm and be successful farmers and also be sustainable farmers. Because that's for one thing, we definitely want people to become farmers, but we also want them to be sustainable, that they'll be able to make a living off of farming. So those are some of those things that we are looking at. We have in the process of purchasing one piece of land in South Carolina, which is quite amazing. It's on St. Helena's Island. We're looking right now in the Midwest, and we're working with great partners right now, looking at pieces of property, and hopefully we'll find one very soon within the Midwest that we can start working with other farmers and other organizations and other mentors to help mentor others. So I'm going through this process. Again, I'm going to turn it around because I don't want y'all to miss this. So it is bubbly. And so, like I said, we are taking out all the water, all the evaporated. And I saw some other questions come up too. I think someone said something wanted to know about jarring or canning it. Was that a question?
I do have a question if you can preserve it in jars in a water bath. Could you water bath can it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, most definitely. Like I said, I mean, you can see this is coming up. It's almost like, it'll end up being very much like almost a syrup. So almost a syrup and a jelly. You got bacon that's already preserved. You can water bath this. It's a wonderful gift. I can tell you no friend is going to say no if you give them bacon jam in a basket. They're not going to say no to. They're not going to say no to that. Yeah. So I'm going through that process of it's boiling down. And so it's going to evaporate and it's just going to get thicker. And, sometimes I can't wait. I just have to eat some, but so I think it's a great process to if you have to preserve or trying to get rid of some bacon, but finding fun ways to do things with bacon. This is a great thing for you're able to do.
I love it. I think I'm in a household of two, and it's always like, well, do we just eat all of the bacon we cooked, or like should we do something with a little bit of it? And I love bacon jams. I'm really excited you're sharing this recipe with us. There are a couple questions about the bacon jam that I'm going to throw at you real quick. And yes, one is that it looks like you just cooked the onion like very little bit before you added the sugar. Is that accurate?
I did that, yes, but you can go ahead if you want to make it translucent if you want to, or even char it. I think it'll just depend on what flavor you're kind of looking for. I'm not trying to kill the bacon flavor, so I am letting it go ahead and just did a light char or a light cook on the bacon. But you can cook the bacon more thorough. The onions more thoroughly if you want to.
Excellent. And then what's the sort of level of heat you have under that pan? Is that a medium?
Let's see what I think. I believe I kicked it up to a high, but I'm a professional. So you could take it down to a medium will be like a medium to medium high will really work. I mean, you're pretty much looking for this. You're looking for this syrup, and the bubbles are getting bigger. Than from before. You'll even hear it that it's starting to sound more bubbly. You'll start seeing the bubbles will go away. You'll start seeing more of the bacon pop up, and the bacon's going to get soft.
Okay, perfect. And there's a question about how long it takes to cook it down, but I'm really glad you showed us that because I think it's really more of how it feels and looks. It depends on the heat underneath.
Right. It will depend on, as much heat or intense heat. And like I did this pretty quickly. Because I want y'all to see this. And I think it will probably take you close to 20 minutes to really get it pretty much cooked down. And you'll feel it. You'll feel that it'll get thick like a syrup. And in fact, mine is pretty much done.
Excellent. Yeah, I could tell when you're pushing that spatula through, it looks thicker already, even even in
Yes.
video, you can see a
So I'm
textural
gonna,
difference.
yeah. So, and you'll smell, you know, it smells amazing because you're not only just smelling the bacon, you can smell a little bit of the apple cider vinegar. And what, you know, once this starts cooling down, you will see that the syrup itself is translucent
Mm-hmm.
and it will get thicker as it cools.
Ah, okay. So the thickness you take it off the stove is not your finish thickness.
No, it will get a little
I
thicker
know.
because it's almost like we're literally making almost candy bacon, y'all. We're making like the poor
Excellent.
man version of candy bacon right here.
I'm just so hungry right now.
So yeah, so this is what we got. And like I said, this is gonna get thicker. And like I said, because it's so hot is the reason why it's not as thick, but it's gonna be dark. It's gonna be dark and it's gonna be syrupy, and you'll feel it that it's a lot thicker than what you started with. And as you can see, the bacon is starting to pop up over this, and then the onions. I like to dice them, dice them smaller. But my favorite thing, and I'm gonna pull it out, is like I made biscuits, y'all.
Oh my gosh. Those look so good.
So I have to tell you, my kid had already came here. My teenager came already and was like, "Are those biscuits?" Yes. Is that bacon? Yes. he's like, "Is that Nyman Ranch bacon?" I was like, "Yes." So yeah. So
I guess you figured out how to get the teenagers' attention.
you get them by smell. You get them by smell. So I'm gonna open that biscuit up, and I'm gonna pull it over here. And as you can see, it's like cooling down right there.
There's a couple of questions in here that I just want to assure you all we'll get to them. A couple of questions about your celery powder and your smoker and the storage for curing the bacon. And also some folks have asked about the recipe for your bacon jam. So if it's all right with you, Adrian, we'll share that in a follow-up email.
Oh yes, most definitely. I will give you the recipe
Perfect.
to bacon jam. And I mean, come on, y'all. I'm not gonna eat it.
I mean, it'd be okay.
I'm very notorious for eating it on camera. So
we're here for that. If that's what your instinct is.
I
won't stop you.
I usually eat on camera to say this is real, y'all. This is not fake food. So there were some questions. One was about my smoker.
Mm-hmm. So a couple people have asked, if you don't have a smoker, could you use a grill, and how?
You need indirect heat, so you're going to have to watch your heat level. It needs to be at around 225 degrees. I use a reverse flow smoker, so I have a big bad boy smoker called Bubba. He, he's invert. He's a reverse smoker. So you want to make sure that if you're doing that you're not going over that temp of 225 degrees, and because you want that internal temperature of 150.
Perfect. So you want a thermometer.
You want a thermometer. Yes, you do.
And
and it's usually only 2 to 3 hours. So it's not even really that long. Because remember, we're not trying to cook it. We're just trying to smoke it. So we're just trying to infuse those smoke flavors into the pork. So and it only will take a couple hours to do.
Perfect. All right. And then how long do you leave it in the brine? I saw this question.
Yes. So I am going to leave mine between 5 and 7 days. Usually it's just preferred. Mostly don't go over 7 days, but you got to remember to flip it. Or you're going to have some salty bacon on one side. You're going to have a really salty bacon. So you want to make sure that you flip it, and you don't want to really go over that time, or you probably will have really, really, really salty bacon. And the only thing I can recommend for you to use is to use that as a flavor for like in your beans or in a soup or something like that. You're not going to want to eat that.
Okay, and leave out the salt in your recipe if you do that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. There's lots of questions about the celery powder. So one question is if celery powder and celery salt are the same, which it doesn't sound like they are. It sounds like celery powder is just straight celery.
Yes, so celery powder is just straight celery. Celery salt is exactly the word, celery and salt. So there's an inclusion of salt as part of that.
Great. And then, Can you tell us a little bit about how you make celery powder from fresh
Yeah,
celery?
which is, hold on, I'm going to pick up a kid. This is real life, y'all.
Hello.
Hi, this is Buzz Lightyear, y'all. My celery powder, I dehydrate or I lay out dry my celery. You can do that with your regular store-bought, I would say buy from a farmer and buy organic. You can lay that straight out. You can dehydrate it and you can turn that into powder. I use a regular coffee spice grinder to turn it into powder. And there you got celery powder.
Excellent. It's like, sounds magical, but it's not too hard.
Nope.
Excellent. And then another question, I think it's a good question, is the container you use for curing the bacon. Two questions there. Do we want to keep it covered the whole time while it's in a refrigerator? And the second question, is it important that we find food grade plastic, or could we use a plastic container?
I recommend food grade plastic. I've been very lucky enough as part of the restaurant that I have one that's big enough to hold that big piece of bacon. You can also cut your bacon in half. It doesn't necessarily have to be half. It can be a quarter. It can be split in half. Hold on real quick. It can be split in half and you can put it in a container. I recommend that it is food grade and also put a top on it. You want to keep it contained. So you don't want any more aerated bacteria in there. You want to keep it as a closed container as possible. And don't forget to flip it.
Perfect. And we're flipping once a day?
Once a day.
Perfect. Perfect. And I think there's another question here on the max temperature during the cure, but I think you covered that when we were talking about the grill versus smoker a little bit. And I'm going to reiterate that you're saying 150 is the internal temperature.
Yes. 150 is your internal temperature. Your highest you really want to go is 225 on your grill or your smoker.
Excellent. And then I like this question. Looking at the cross section, does it matter which way the end product is sliced? Is there a grain to the belly?
Oh, yes, most definitely there is a grain to the belly that you're going to want to keep. And that is that I'm going to do some rearranging so I can bring it back up here for y'all. Give me 1 second.
And when you showed us the smoked piece that was already smoked, I could tell on the side. You can see
I'm gonna turn my camera a little bit.
Perfect.
So if you imagine, let me see. I can't even control if you imagine that this was the continuation of the belly, you're gonna slice it that way. And when I flip it over, you can already see that grain of what a piece of bacon looks like. So you're going to want to slice it that way. So you're going to want to turn it. And what you're going to want to do is going to slice it this way. So when you slice your pork belly, I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Hold on real quick. One-handed pork belly.
That would be impressive.
Yeah. One-handed pork belly. Let me see. This is probably not the cleanest cut, sorry. Haha, pretty good. You'll get that slice of bacon. And like I said, the best part is deciding whatever thickness you want in your own piece of bacon. So, sometimes you cook your bacon and your bacon's kind of thin and you're like, I wish my bacon was a little bit thicker. You can decide on how thick you decide you want to have that bacon. You don't want to cut your bacon this way. You're not going to get that desired look or desired piece that you're really wanting.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
One more question about the temperature. So what is sort of the maximum temperature, since lots of us are in winter right now? Jenna is asking if a 50-degree garage would be cold enough.
No, you're going to want a refrigerated temperature, because when you start getting up to those higher temperatures, you are creating bacteria. And especially if you know about pork is very susceptible to containing raw pork is really susceptible to containing bacteria. So you're going to want your temperature to be in that refrigerated temperature range that you're going to want. You're going to want in the lower 40s and the 30s.
Perfect. Great. So if you're in Wisconsin, your garage is good. Yeah. If you're further north, be careful.
Check it out.
Ah, beautiful.
So this is what you're going to get as your bacon jam. Mm-hmm. And it is getting pretty thick.
Yeah.
pretty hot, but this will be your bacon jam. And you can, like I said, you can pour it into jars. You can seal them. You can take them and put them in your refrigerator. It will congeal and get hard. You can warm it back up and it will create that syrup again. Unless you want cold bacon jam.
I mean, I'll take any bacon jam. Okay, one more question about the curing. Rosemary is asking if there needs to be a certain amount of cure so the meat doesn't spoil. So I think, is there a certain level of salt or celery powder that we want in relation to the poundage of the pork belly to make sure that it goes wrong?
I in the recipe that I'll give you, it'll be work with a about 5 pounds. And you're on that curing. If you're deciding to use pink salt or if you're deciding to use celery powder, it's going to be 1-to-1. It's usually between 1 to 2 tablespoons as what you need to create it and use your pink salt. So in that recipe, I'm sorry, that tablespoons, teaspoons. Woo, let me get that right. 1 teaspoons, and you just need to mix that in there, and it'll help with the preservation. And also the salt that we're using is also helping in the preservation. You want to make sure you include that and make sure you include that salt, because salt is part of that curing factor, or you will start creating bacteria problems.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Look out for the recipe. I'm going to send an email to all of you who are registered for this session, so the recipe and a link to this session so you can refer back to it.
Right. And I wanted to just reiterate, this is fun. So you don't necessarily have to follow all those spices. You decide if you just want a salt and pepper, or you just want to add pepper or a red pepper flake. Like somebody asked if that was just, so if you can make it spicy, this is the time where if you're deciding to customly make your bacon, nobody else has that bacon. This is going to be whatever bacon you decide to make. You can make a regular applewood or a regular mesquite, but this is a chance, like I said, to add what you want. And me this year, I added ramps.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned that. A couple of people have asked about how they can get your bacon. So I said, if you're in Wisconsin, check out Uptown. But if you're not, Nyman Ranch sent this pork belly to Adrian. So you can look for where Nyman Ranch is sold near you and try it out. And it sounds to me like the essential ingredient is either celery powder or salt. But other than that, you do you.
Yes. Yeah, you can do you on the spices. And like I said, I am more tend to add a little more aromatic of flavors. So that's why I added a little bit of clove and a little bit of, allspice. I mean, you can add a little bit of cinnamon if you want to. And it's light. So you'll get those hints and flavors when you're cooking it, because remember, smoking it for that time frame, you're going to get a lot of that smoke factor and part of that. And it's a hit or miss. Make another pork belly. It's not like bacon, like people don't want bacon. So you're able to continue on and just play around with the flavor characteristics of what you decide your pork should be.
Excellent. And Kate asked if there's a substitute for ramp, but what I want to ask you is what is the flavor you're getting from the wild ramp? What's the choice to put it in there?
So it's a onion powder. It is like a wild onion. So this has a more subtle of flavor of an onion, but you can replace it with onion powder.
Perfect. Oh, somebody has tried your biscuits and says they're bomb. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure it's true.
Yeah, that's why my kid was up here. You making biscuits?
Excellent. Jana has asked if you can smoke the bacon in a Traeger grill, and I actually have a Traeger, and if you have the kind that you can regulate the temperature, I think yes would be the answer.
I mean, but you also can get a thermometer that can go inside your grill to kind of regulate that temperature too. So if you're a techie, or like my husband's a techie and has them Wi-Fi to his phone and such, you can definitely do that too. But I am really old school, old fashioned on the reverse, the reverse smoker.
Excellent. I guess if you have this much snow outside, it might be nice to have your phone telling you when you get there.
Yeah, really great for your phone to tell you and beep.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna take a quick look. Okay. Can you have just cured bacon without smoking it?
Yes, you can. You don't need to smoke your bacon. What I mean, I don't know who wants not smoke bacon, but if you decide that you do not want to smoke your bacon, you still go through that part of the curing process. You're going to have to, in which I think I probably moved too fast to even fail to mention, is you're going to want to clean off your bacon after you cure it. So I think that's a very important thing. So after we cure this bacon, that big long piece that you saw, we do wash the bacon off of that salt. Needs to be washed off, and it'll be in the directions when you get them. And what you'll have is just a regular bacon. And instead it won't have that smoky factor that you're looking for when you smoke a piece of bacon. And then you can slice that bacon and fry it up if you want to.
Excellent. Excellent. And you used garlic in the recipe. Was it dried garlic or fresh garlic?
That's up to you. I use a garlic powder. It's a lot easier. It's easier to distribute versus if you're going to chop it up and put it on. If I wanted to get fancy, maybe I would chop it up, but most likely I would stick with just using garlic powder.
Excellent. And a couple more questions. I imagine your arm might be getting a little tired.
No.
Okay, good. You're a cook, so a lot of arm workouts there. Any tips about the bacon grease for later use, either saving it or using it?
So two things I like. I like when I get my picks back, I like to have the lard too. And I like to clean the lard myself, but you can get leaf lard, and leaf lard I love to use in pie crust. So that is the ultimate pie crust, that flakiness, that wonderfulness that you get from that, you can use for that. As for bacon grease, I like to season my skillets with the bacon grease, but also use it as a flavoring for other things that you decide to use. If you're going to fry up, my son likes to use it for, he likes to make burgers. So he likes to use it to put in a pan for burgers. It can be used a lot for, for many different things, especially if you're looking for that flavor from your bacon to be infused into something that you're cooking. If you're using it making vegetables, he likes to use it with asparagus too. So there's just different things that you may want to use your bacon grease for. And for, like I said, for me, when we have an overuse of bacon grease, I like to use it to help season my skillets, but also my kid likes to use it with his vegetables.
Me too. Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, asparagus.
Excellent. Let's see. How about a recommendation on which knife to use to slice it, or maybe just a sharp one?
Oh, yeah. So what's really funny is I will use my bread knife, which is probably one of the longest knives that people have to be able to help it and create that cut. So it won't take that long to cut, but a chef knife works very well. Just make sure that it's sharpened. If you decide to use a regular knife, those are probably the knives that I would recommend.
Excellent. All right, and we're getting close to the hour, so I'm going to ask you one more question before we wrap it up. This has been very exciting, and I can't wait to go eat. Alicia has asked what your secret is for your biscuits.
Oh my goodness. A lot of love, but it's really technique. And I think a lot of people are very surprised about how my biscuits turn out. And it's mainly because of the technique of folding. Instead of mixing, I fold. And if you're creating, one thing I can tell you to do is once you have your dough, start folding it. Don't mix it. Fold it on top of each other. In fact, best way to kind of fold it, if you know how to make croissants, or what they say is the envelope fold. So if you have a piece of paper and you fold one part in and then the other part in, that is how I usually make my biscuits. So making folds. So just think about making layers of your dough being flipped on layers and layers and layers. And then that's where you'll get those air pockets to create that height for you.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you for sharing your
No.
secret. Since we all can't go to Uptown Cafe. Well,
No,
excellent.
I've been asked to do a biscuit class, so
Oh, excellent. Great. Well, I'll keep an eye out and I'll share it on the Slow Food channels when you do, if it's virtual. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get to your questions, but I encourage you to follow Adrian online and follow 40 Acres and Uptown as well. This has been deliciously exciting, and I'm really thankful to Nyman Ranch for sending you that big pork belly and getting you on here with us. And I want to mention one more time, I'm going to throw this link in here so you can support the 40 Acres project in buying land. I think this is a really, what you mentioned, Adrian, it's a really important piece of moving forward in agriculture and food at this moment is land ownership and support Black farmers, like your t-shirt says. I think that's really, really important. So jump onto that website and make a donation. Nyman will match your donation. Good luck curing your bacon. Tag Adrian and tag Nyman and tag Slow Food when you make bacon or bacon jam and let us know how it goes. Keep an eye out for that email. We'll send recipes and links and more info so you can keep up with all of us. And you can follow up and make your own recipes at home and let us know what kind of funky stuff you do, if you're putting peppers in it or any other flavors. I'd love to know what y'all are doing out there. Adrian, thank you so much. I'm gonna let you wrap us up. I really appreciate your energy today. This has been really fun.
No, this is great. I mean, you make my house smell wonderful, y'all. So. But most definitely, if you do have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or shoot me a message on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to answer. And enjoy making bacon. It's like a wonderful time. If you're in winter like me, this is like a perfect thing to do indoors. And it's great to get the kids involved in kind of understanding where bacon really does come from. And, a lot of people just think it comes from the grocery store, but to understand what part of the pig it comes from and meet and talk to the farmers and really understand what is the process of them growing that pig and what it takes. It's not an overnight feat. So this is something that you really learn to respect the trade, but also respect the animals. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adrian. And stay tuned. We have 3 more sessions with Nyman Ranch. We're going to cover grass-fed beef and policy. And give me a second. I'm making a tonka bar with Lisa and Arlo Iron Cloud, which is a native recipe. I'm really excited about those sessions. Thank you, Adrian, for getting us started in this series. This is wonderful. I'm going to throw a link in here if anybody wants to register for a future session. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. It's a big day for us if you're stateside. So take care of yourself and let's keep moving forward. Thanks so much, Adrian, for being here with us today.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.